Welcome to Digital Hospitality. Happy Wednesday. Thank you guys for being here. This is LinkedIn Live. If you're listening on replay, please join us on stage on LinkedIn Live. Follow Cali BBQ Media for the show, the link to the showroom. If you want, you can email me, Sean at calibbq.media. We can add you to the calendar invite. That way it's easy for you to find a link to the room, but please add some friends, come up here, come up on stage. We're going to go ahead and Richard, can you give me an update? It's great to see you, my friend. Thank you for holding down the room. How was hosting the room while I was away?
With great power comes no responsibility. We didn't sink the ship.
You didn't sink the ship. No, that's rule number one. Keep the show going.
Well, we didn't sink the ship. I know you Americans did that sort of a couple of centuries ago with a bunch of tea on it, but I'm still bitter about that. But no, the ship kept floating. We had a good session, and hopefully people enjoyed it and learned something. And I think that's sort of one of the things I've learned about being in this space is it's about the opportunity to learn, enjoy, feel safe, and hang out with great people. And I think we certainly achieved that on the cruise ship while you're away.
Well, I certainly appreciate it, Richard. I got incredible feedback from all of the rooms. Your room also had incredible feedback. I can't wait to listen to it once we get it published on our feeds. But Laura, welcome to the stage. How are you doing?
Doing great, and I will applaud Richard for his room. It was about start, stop, continue. And we just had so much fun. And Sean, we missed you, and welcome back. And I want to hear a little bit about Puerto Vallarta.
I will tell you some hospitality stories about Puerto Vallarta.
I'd love to hear it.
Thank you, Laura. Chris, welcome to the stage. How are you doing?
I'm surviving. Just another day in paradise.
Can you give us a quick, who are you? What do you believe in? Give us an intro for the people that are listening.
Yes, sir. Chris Dial, Wanderlinger Brewing Company and CSNA Insurance. Own a brewery in Chattanooga, and I do commercial insurance for restaurants and other hospitality industry, including breweries. Right now I'm dealing with a landlord that is choosing to not renew my lease for the brewery. So that's been my fun for the last 2 weeks.
Oh, sorry to hear that. We wish you well on that. That is not a fun place to be in, but hopefully you can get things worked out. Hopefully you have some fallback options.
I'm working diligently to figure all that out.
Right on. Well, if there's anyone in this community, we got a lot of people in here that have real estate space background, and I'm sure this community would be happy to jump on a call and point you in the right direction if you need that help. So,
absolutely.
Thanks, Chris. Mike LaRue in the house. Mike LaRue, the content.
What's going on?
What's up, dude? How are you?
Fantastic. Thank you.
How is Mike LaRue? Thank you.
Mike LaRue is doing amazing. Just every day is an education. Learning how to balance and manage life, work, kids, the whole gamut. Well, it's at the end of the day, it's blessed. What do I believe in? I believe in obviously believe in food and how food can impact community. But one of the things I've always kind of known, but being associated, I think, with this group has kind of exposed not just the opportunity and to create the space to, I guess, be vulnerable, but to see what can come out of that. And it's been great.
Well, we're grateful that you're part of the community, that you keep showing up, and happy to have you here today. Thanks, Mike.
Thank you.
Scott Turner in the house. In summer, we see you down below. Jason, if you guys want to join us on stage, we'd love to have you. Please raise your hand so we can do that. It's not like Clubhouse where I can force. I don't know about force you on stage, but I can ask you to come on stage with a button. Maybe LinkedIn will add that feature. But Scott, how you doing?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. I'm all good. Hello, everyone. Scott from Modern Hospitality. We help hoteliers to think differently to create outlets their guests will love. We're working on a few things this week, but primarily we've been testing out really driving YouTube. We're posting 1 or 2 times a day, and we've seen a huge increase in traffic and views and analytics. So I think that's been a really good strategy. We also launched the podcast with you, Sean, this week as well, and we released it in video format as well as audio format for the first time, and it's been quite well received as well. So really excited to take that to the next level. So looking forward to Room.
That's awesome. I appreciate it, Scott. Well, I will give the room a vulnerable update on my trip to Puerto Vallarta, Mexico. Went with my family, my wife, my daughter, my son. I used to go to Puerto Vallarta back when I was a boy, about 10 years old. Every December, I would go with my grandfather and grandmother to a resort down there. So I haven't been back in probably 20 years. So this was the first time bringing my family back down there. We took the advice of a family friend for an all-inclusive resort that was very family friendly. And I guess this goes to personal recommendations, but we believed that person was going to lead us on the right path, and we booked this trip. We went on Expedia, looked at the photos. The photos looked good. I did make the mistake of not reading the reviews, so I read the reviews after. But suffice it to say, we got to Puerto Vallarta, we got to the hotel, and it wasn't what we had expected. It wasn't what we wanted. The hotel was in very poor condition, and we were not happy. Thankfully, the hotel refunded our money. We checked out of that hotel, and I actually contacted the hotel that I used to go to when I was a boy with my grandfather, and they said they had availability. We said we wanted to come and see the room before we made any commitments, and we went there and experienced first-class hospitality. The entire team at Velos Vallarta was beyond, like, everything that you expect and that you hope for from every single position. That's what they do. I mean, when I think of like Auden Hospitality and what Scott does to talk about hotels and put hotels in the highest light and F&B in the highest light, this is what that hotel was doing. What was interesting was the lack of technology that they're using. Thinking of like an all-inclusive resort and how many people were at the resort, and they have a buffet that you can go to, and then they have restaurants that you can go to, but there's literally no digital tracking of what's getting eaten, what's getting spent, how many people are coming in. They're asking for your room number, so you're giving them a room number, but that's about it. So like from a technology perspective, the things that we talk about in these rooms, digital hospitality, technology is going to make a huge impact globally, and we're only in the beginning. We feel like we're, because this community is on the cutting edge of where technology is. So we feel like all of these places have all of these things, but there's just so much room for growth on the point of sale side, on the inventory side, on the accounting side, on the customer service side, on the feedback side. It was interesting for me because, I guess in the hotel space, they spend a lot of time with TripAdvisor and with like Expedia, Booking.com, all of these sites that as restaurants, we don't, our restaurant is located in a off the beaten path in San Diego. So I don't ever talk about TripAdvisor. I don't even know the last time that I logged into TripAdvisor. Thankfully, Marquee, one of the companies that we use in our digital hospitality tech stack, helps us update the TripAdvisor site. But TripAdvisor is just something that when we went somewhere, we went on a boat tour, we had an incredible experience, and I wanted to write a review. I wrote a review on TripAdvisor. We wrote a review for the hotel on TripAdvisor. But all in all, it was an incredible trip. But I guess it goes back to learning. Personal recommendations are one thing, but also lean on technology. I went back and read the reviews of that first hotel. They have an AI tool that summarizes all the thousands of the reviews, and even the AI tool basically said, "Don't go to this hotel." So let that be a lesson to me, and hopefully a lesson to the room or to anybody. Make sure when you're traveling to do your digital due diligence, as well as that personal human connection. But that is besides the point. I just wanted to update the room, and I appreciate everybody for being here while we were away, the Cali Barbecue Media team and everybody that stepped up to host the rooms. We are grateful for this community. Today, we are going to talk about curiosity conversations. How can you have more curiosity conversations? I just finished a book while I was gone down in Puerto Vallarta, and it's A Curious Mind Expanded. So Brian Grazer, who is a Hollywood producer, he works with Ron Howard and has produced some incredible movies: A Beautiful Mind, Apollo 13, Splash, Friday Night Lights, 8 Mile, American Gangster, just this prolific career. But what he does and what he talks about in this book is a practice that he started called Curiosity Conversations. He was just following his curiosity, and he wanted to sit with people that he didn't think he could sit with, just for a lunch, just for an hour. And I hate the term pick their brain, but essentially pick their brain, follow his curiosity, listen, ask questions, and learn how. But it wasn't just in the field of movies, and it wasn't just in the field of, production. It was scientists, it was athletes, it was political figures, it was anybody that he was curious about. He made a practice of literally one. I think at one point he was doing it once a day, and then eventually it was once a week, as he got busier. But for me, the reason why, obviously, my grandfather, the thing we talk about all the time, the lesson my grandfather taught me: stay curious, get involved, ask for help. Curiosity brings you to a Clubhouse room, which is where this community started, on Clubhouse, like a crazy audio app during the pandemic. Like, what's happening? Why are people there? And one of the things that I loved about Clubhouse is you had to believe in technology to be on Clubhouse. Like, you had to be a little bit crazy to be on the app Clubhouse, to be curious about what's going on, what is audio rooms. And yet here we are, 3 years later, on LinkedIn Live, a live audio platform that LinkedIn has updated, and now we're repurposing. But these are all curiosity conversations. I mean, it's one of the reasons I love this community and this open style, because everyone can come up on stage. We're allowed to have up to 17 people come up on stage to have a curiosity conversation. Like, this is making it consistent. How do we make it consistent in our work week to have curiosity conversations? That's what this community is. Being a podcaster also is a way that forces you out of what you're normally doing to have a conversation that's hopefully recorded on audio, video, transcribed, published. But then it also allows you to follow your curiosity. When I talk to people that are starting their podcasts and they're asking, which guests should I have on? What's the audience want? I go, the most important thing is, are you curious? Do you want to have the conversation? Because if you don't want to have the conversation, now you're put in a legacy media position. There's so many people that have to interview people that they're not curious about. I wish Stover could unmute, because he actually has a journalist background, and I love when he talks about his newspaper days and being assigned as a reporter, and then having the freedom to pick his own stories. Like, you get to pick your own stories. That's the world we live in. If you pick your own story, you can have a curiosity conversation. And, the people that we've been able to interview on our shows, restaurant influencers, digital hospitality, and just basically the willingness to set up a schedule to make sure that you have these curiosity conversations. So the topic is curiosity. Welcome to the stage. I see you guys down below. Please raise your hand if you want to come up on stage. Grateful to have you. Stover, are you able to unmute, or are you just in recording mode? I think he's in recording mode, so we're going to skip over Stover. Thank you for producing and publishing and promoting and doing all the things you do. Troy Hooper, welcome to the stage.
Well, happy Wednesday, everybody. Sorry I'm a little late. Had a chiropractic adjustment, ran a little long, feeling pretty tall and straight today. So happy to be
great.
here.
You're adjusted.
I'm adjusted.
Well,
Less
welcome to the stage. Let's talk about curiosity.
So I've only been here a couple of minutes. What about curiosity? Set me up on the curiosity train.
So I finished a book called A Curious Mind Expanded, and it's Brian Grazer. He is the producer. He worked with Ron Howard to do 8 Mile, A Beautiful Mind, some incredible movies, American Gangster. But he wrote this book. It was a second book after his Face to Face, which was talking about eye contact, how much power there is in eye contact. And what he talked about is the practice, the ritual of getting outside of his normal business to follow his curiosity and meet with people that inspired him or that he was curious about. And he never did it in a podcast form, but that's what essentially we're doing as podcasters, is we're chasing our curiosity. Hopefully that you're having curious conversations with people that you want to have on. What do you do to chase your curiosity?
Awesome. I started a podcast. Real quick on the podcast. I haven't yet had anybody on that I didn't know. I recently had somebody on I didn't know really well, so that helped. And I think that's really going to help the podcast. I think to get my feet wet, I started interviewing all my friends and people like you guys, and there'll be many more of you that we do that with. But I think it's going to help the show to talk to people I don't know really well, because I think it obviously opens up the opportunity for organic, curious questions. But I've always been a pretty curious guy. Most people tell me, my God, I actually had somebody in Chicago at NRA after some drinks say, you know what I love about you, Trey? You're just really curious. You ask a lot of good questions. I was like, holy shit. Okay, that was a cool compliment. And I do think to the point of that book and that statement, I try to do, I used to do a lot more of outside the industry, curious listening. I think listening to Gary Vee helps a lot because he talks to a lot of people. I think it's why I like the 4Ds part of Gary Vee's content, because he's talking to a lot of different kinds of business owners about the same problem. So, he's kind of equalizing and lowest common denominator answers, which I think are pretty cool. But I do listen to podcasts that have nothing to do with the restaurant industry. I actually struggle to consume too much within the industry because I'm so engulfed in the conferences and the stages and all that stuff all the time that, to watch The Bear on Netflix or, some of these other movies or shows, I struggle to stay completely immersed in the industry 24/7. I need like a little break. And my break tends to be outside the industry, listening to business leaders. I like to listen to entrepreneurs who have built something, like Jesse Itzler, who you've talked to in person, Sean. I follow him. I follow his wife, who built Spanx. I'm really fascinated about the entrepreneur who has built something big or successful or unique, but in a different industry, because I think the lessons, and this is what it's all about at the end of the day, I'll land the plane with, it really is all about resonating and listening for those lessons that make sense in your business, but maybe will let you think of it in a different way. How can what they did in their business to achieve their success be translated? How can you learn something from that? How can you take a tactic or a tip or a strategy from that? And how can you apply that in your business to disrupt and do what we all do differently? I mean, that's really one of the big unlocks is how can you do what you do differently in your business, in your industry, so that you're attracting somebody different. You're qualifying a different value prop. I mean, Sean, you're a great example with what you're able to charge as you've elevated your business. It's very common in the marketing world to ladder up, right? You charge one fee now, you get enough customers to pay that fee, you start charging a higher fee, and you just keep laddering up. And it really is about having, and you coach people all the time, don't ask for 5. If you need 5, ask for 10. If you need 10, ask for 40. Challenge the consumer, challenge the market, do it differently. So I think using your curiosity to look for common threads, tips, tactics, and strategies in multiple industries that you can use to disrupt what you do and how you do it and how you present yourself within your niche is a key tactic that works a lot. So I'll leave it with that.
That's awesome. It's great to have you back. It's great to all be back. Richard, how do you...
Hey, by the way, 1 second before we go to Richard, how do I sound?
You sound great.
Well, guess what?
You have connected earbuds.
No, but Apple AirPod Pros come with soft tips now, and I got Apple AirPod Pros. I'm driving 80 miles an hour on the 101 freeway right now.
80 miles an hour. Slow it down.
Yeah. Okay, I'll slow down.
Wild Bandit. You got a beautiful family.
Old lady?
You got a beautiful family. We're trying to keep Troy for the long term.
All right. But anyway, point being, road noise, air noise, traffic noise, you don't hear any of it, right? These are pretty good earbuds, right? For all the shit I've gotten over the years for my shitty earbuds, these sound pretty good, right?
Santa's still going to bring you some connected earbuds.
Okay, all right. $40 connected earbuds. All right.
That's what you're getting, buddy. You're
all right. On to Richard.
Richard, give us a story about curiosity, my friend.
Yeah, this is a great topic. And I think by being curious, for me, it's about having conversations with people, asking questions and listening. And I think I've been really, really lucky in my life that, I was taught the idea of being curious from a young age. And I've met astronauts that have been in space, World Cup winners, elite coaches, and incredible business people, and people that politicians, people that have done incredible things, whether they be, globally recognized names or people that live in the same town. And I think the idea of listening and asking questions and being inspired by people is one of those things that adds so much richness and depth to our lives. And I think, it's a great way of approaching people. And I want to leave you with a quote from one of my favorite American philosophers of the last few years. And they said, "One day I was driving my son to school and I saw a quote by Walt Whitman. It was painted on the wall there and it said, 'Be curious, not judgmental.'" I like that. That was Ted Lasso.
You're always going to get me with Ted Lasso. That was amazing. Yes, be curious, not judgmental. And if anybody hasn't seen that specific Ted Lasso episode or that scene, I'm sure you could find it on YouTube. It wouldn't surprise me, but it's phenomenal. Thank you so much, Richard. Laura?
Hello.
Curiosity.
Yes, I just returned from the Texas Restaurant Show, and there are a lot of large restaurant groups based in Texas, and I wasn't sure it was a show that I needed to be at, but I definitely want to get to know the who's who in the Texas restaurant world better. So I spent my weekend in San Antonio, and I wasn't sure, what to expect about San Antonio. It completely exceeded my expectations. But kind of the theme, and I think I shared this earlier this year with this group, is I really do believe that showing up is probably as much as 80% of success, and especially showing up consistently. So one of my goals was to show up to this group consistently this year. And I'm so thankful that I have been able to do so. And I just book my appointments around the time of our meeting, right? But one of the sessions that I attended on Monday was about restaurant culture, and the CEOs of Velvet Taco, a 70 location Denny's franchisee, the owner of that franchise group, and the CEO of Hopdoddy were on the panel. So restaurant culture was the topic. And when you break it all down, the number one thing that all of these leaders said that you need to have to create a great culture is listening to your people. And it sounds so simple, but it's really not. The bigger you get and the busier you get. And the gentleman from Hopdoddy, Jeff, mentioned that they have a wellness wheel that they use for all of their team members, and they're focused on their wellness beyond work, right? And it was specifically their mental health wellness and their financial wellness. So they're working with their team members to just help support them beyond what they do during the workday, because the statistics related to mental health and drug and alcohol addiction in the restaurant industry are huge. As far as, I think they said something like, sorry, my doggy Joey girl wants to say hi, something like 78% or something of employees in the restaurant world are dealing with some sort of issue. So that when it comes to curiosity, again, listening, having a genuine care and concern for other people, and a genuine desire to help other people. And again, I really believe that this group has that. Everyone is an excellent listener. Everyone is encouraging. And Mike, you mentioned earlier the vulnerability thing. What's so interesting about sharing in a vulnerable way is it does somehow push you out of your comfort zone, and it feels really uncomfortable. But when we're a little bit outside of our comfort zone, that's where we learn and that's where we grow.
Which is so awesome, Laura. I couldn't agree more with you about the showing up and the consistency, and so happy that you got uncomfortable and went to Texas. San Antonio is awesome. I've been there once, but I'm happy that that show was beneficial for you.
It was. Thank you.
Of course. Jason Berkowitz is found cell service. Can he unmute? We can't hear you, Jason.
Leave the room and come back, Jason. And if you're on desktop, it doesn't work.
Dramatic pause. I definitely don't think he's on desktop, but maybe he is. All right, Jason, we'll come back to you. Chris, you have a story about curiosity. How do you chase your curiosity?
Yeah, absolutely. When we opened a brewery back in 2016, I knew nothing about running a brewery, and I got to talking to other brewery owners and trying to learn as much as I could. I was always curious about what they were doing and how they were doing it. And as time moved on, it became more about not just being a brewery, but being in the hospitality industry. And that's where I found your podcast, Sean, and then some other podcasts, Hustle Sold Separately, Craft Brewery Finance, Profit First, all sorts of different podcasts and books that helped lead me down a road of becoming a better manager, a better leader, better understanding of what customers were wanting and what experience we could provide for them. And I find myself, as I transition from being the brewery owner into the insurance world, I'm kind of back into the curiosity stage of continuing to develop what I don't know, and how do I find out what's most important to other people and how can I be a valuable asset. And it's that curiosity that just keeps me asking questions and trying to learn more so I can be a valuable asset to others and not just always expect somebody to be an asset to me.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing, Chris. Thanks for being here. Mike LaRue, curiosity. How do you chase your curiosity?
Interesting topic. So there's a book called Think Again. And, I I grew up with a very, stubborn father. God bless his heart. My dad was amazing, but also very stubborn. So I was at one point in life very stubborn, and I feel that these days, and not to bring up politics, I won't, but you see it a lot. And when you think of like psychologically, people will tend to gravitate to those who just kind of believe in the same things they do. And no one's curious. Like, no one's curious to understand, hey, awesome. Like, I appreciate what you believe in. I appreciate how you do things. And again, whether it's how you run a restaurant, how you get involved in the community, or what best practices you use to market your product, whatever. And you know there's a lot of I feel like there's a lot of assumptions just based off of what someone knows, and I think people aren't comfortable with sharing that, hey, I don't, I only know so much. And so I think that book, Think Again, and just being curious and thinking that, hey, maybe I don't have all the answers, and even in arguments or just constructive conversations, taking a scientific approach in understanding how someone got to, hey, how did what did you go through, or what how did you, or what's the word I'm looking for, so how did you come to that conclusion, and just coming from an understanding perspective, not, hey, I got you, or I know more than you. And so I think just the idea of curiosity in anything, you open a whole new world of growing, learning, and you obviously become the better version of yourself. But yeah, that book, Think Again, really kind of gave a different perspective on, specifically in the context of that book, when it comes down to, arguing a certain point. If you take more of a scientific and curiosity approach and not necessarily trying to get your point across, and having people see how much you start to better understand how someone gets to a certain mindset. And it creates more constructive and beneficial, I think, conversation.
It's great, Mike. Yeah, it reminds me that there's some statistic, I need to find it, but it was about people asking questions. Like when you're a kid, I have a 7-year-old boy and a 5-year-old girl, and they're starting to ask questions. And just recently I told Colleen, he was asking a bunch of questions one day, and I was like, you should really always ask questions. And there's some statistic that, like, I don't know, as you go from, once you can start speaking and formulating ideas and questions, like throughout grade school, you start to ask more questions, but eventually at some point that graph starts to go down, where humans start to ask less and less questions. And one of the things I admire the most about my grandfather is he was a medical doctor, but he thought everyone had valuable information. It didn't matter who you were, what your background was. He always was asking questions. So the answer is always going to be asking more questions.
Well, my wife, she tells me this all the time, and I don't recall who the quote's from, but it was basically it's like the most successful people are the ones who ask the most questions.
That's not surprising. That's great. Jason Berkowitz, are you able to unmute?
Can you hear me now?
We can hear you now.
So I'm off the headphones. LinkedIn was giving me a little bit of trouble coming in, but I'm happy to be here, calling in from the road. Jason Berkowitz, Arrow Up Training, and it sounds like man, are you there? I get a call right when I'm talking.
right.
You know what? The lesson of the day should be persistence, because
that is always a lesson
everything-
of the day.
I am not stopping. I will speak, but I will speak quickly.
Speak. Good. Tell us a story, Rabbi Berkowitz.
All right, really quickly, hearing about what's going on. A short quip will be in sort of what was just being mentioned, is how we can really learn from everybody around us. And one thing that I loved is as I rised in the ranks of leadership into the C-suite in restaurants, was making sure that I was always unbelievably curious about the people around me. And look, at a particular point, I was honored enough to work as a COO, which means I'm talking about vice presidents who I have to have the lack of ego and the sense of self-worth to know and to go in and say, I'm ready to learn from them, which is so huge, because it makes you stronger and it makes them feel so much better. And one time in particular, Brooke Burton, I think she was a director of learning for me. She's all over LinkedIn. She's amazing. We were going into a difficult conversation with a couple people, and she turned to me and she said, not to speak out of turn, but I love to go into these conversations assuming positive intent of the other person. And I want everybody to know that. And if there's anything we can do to share the idea of assume positive intent, I would love that to be a message that carries over. And I loved it. And that was just one perfect example of something, I'd learned a long time ago going into coaching conversations was I wouldn't go in and say what the problem was. I would always just say, talk to me. Because if you say talk to me, they're going to tell you something you never thought about. They're going to talk about something that's on their mind. And why would I miss that opportunity to learn what they're actually thinking about or bothering them? So I was ready to go in with that. But adding even that little bit of added value of, if there's any way we can communicate to the two people to assume positive intentions of the other person, even if they're pissing them off, it's disarming this expectation. And so by me being open, I learned something amazing, and I continue to love to learn something amazing by the people around me.
That is amazing. Talk to me. That was it.
Talk to me with hers was assume positive intention.
No, but yours was talk to me. That's how you lead.
That's how I lead.
Wow.
When I go into a corrective action, or I go into anything, which I haven't done for a long time, but as a general manager or whatnot, I would walk in, I would sit down, and I would just say, talk to me. And that's it. They give you everything. And they appreciate, because the worst is if you speak in an assuming tone and they weren't in the wrong, now you've given them all the power and you're backtracking everything. So it's gold for me. And I would love if anyone challenges that in another way, but I think it's gold.
It's awesome.
On the next podcast episode that you do, Sean, you should just say, "Talk to me."
No more stadium and stage question. Just say, "Talk to me." See how long you would be surprised. I've had some guests that have they've been waiting for their time to talk, and not many, but some. Fantastic. Let's see here. Scott Turner, you got a story about curiosity?
Yeah, I'm totally with Troy on looking at people outside the industry. I think it's a huge benefit of how you can just bring a different perspective. We opened a fast casual brand, and when we did it, we wanted the service to be different from others, and we studied the Apple Store and the creation around the Apple Store, and we studied a lady called Angela Anitz, who was the VP of retail, and I think there's huge benefit in that. And I'm with Troy on that. A lot of podcasts I listen to are outside the industry. I think things like Chris Do that really focus on like self skills are super important. But I'm curious every day because people pay me to be curious about their brand and be curious about the industry, which means we can bring a different perspective. So I think everything I do is coming in from a place of curiosity. So whether that's going to different restaurants, whether that's looking at different trends, whether that's looking at things that are happening outside the industry and how we can bring it in, I think we're all curious in one way, shape, or another, and I think it's that curiosity that really leads to opening avenues. I think the first time we met Sean, it was because we'd been on a panel. I was super curious about some of the things that you said, and I took the opportunity to reach out and ask for a chat, and that's how we ended up getting to know each other, and me ending up on these calls. And I think the minute you stop being curious, the minute you stop moving forwards, and that's a really scary thought for me. So, every day I turn up, I want to be curious. I've got a LinkedIn post actually ready to go out, which is an email, a screenshot of my emails that literally has the daily email coming in from all the different restaurant platforms from around the world. So Eater from pretty much most cities in the US, restaurant here in the UK, some bits from Asia, and the post is basically saying never stop learning. And that seems pretty good for this one today. Is curiosity and learning go hand in hand, and I think it just makes you stronger on the other side and makes you push boundaries more.
I love that, Scott. Yeah, never stop learning. That's a mantra we can all live by. It was one of the things that when I first started Cali Barbecue, I remember finding restaurantowner.com, which was the first subscription that I paid for. But their tagline was a great restaurateur is always learning. Always learning is something that is near and dear to everyone that comes into this community. That's why we're all here. We see you down below. Summer, Chris, Simon, Mark, Kyle, what's up? Jesse, how you guys doing? We'd love to have you come on stage and share your story if you're available. If you're just listening, no worries. Please follow each other. If you guys want a calendar invite to the room, just send me an email, Sean@calibbq.media. And I will add you to the weekly calendar. Hopefully that's easier to get into the room. Please bring a friend. Please follow each other. And let's go to our friend, Dean LeBay. Dean LeBay, what's up?
Not much, guys. Not much, guys. When you look at my name there, you see the potato. People ask me, what's the potato for? The potato is to remind me to be curious. And I learned that in these rooms. It's for the potato theory too, but that's what the potato's for.
Tell us the potato theories, Dean. This is getting replayed on Digital Hospitality. We need to know your potato theory story.
The potato theory story is pretty simple. Basically, in the summer of '69, the world was in chaos. Vietnam was going on, and I spent the night with my best friend in Little League. We played Little League game, and his mom asked me to spend the night, and we did. So I went over there, and it was the first time I ever spent the night over another person's house outside my own. I'm one of 5 boys in our family. And basically, Miss Oliver, that's Jim's mother, Miss Oliver, she made a meal, and she had like ham, string beans, turnip greens, something like that, but there were no potatoes. And in my personal life, in my home in Hooks, Texas, growing up until that point in time, I had never had a meal that there weren't potatoes involved. You know, if we had mashed potatoes at night, I knew in the morning we were going to have fried potato cakes. We had hash browns in the morning, I knew that we was going to have them at lunch. We just had potatoes in every meal. But anyway, she didn't have potatoes. And so I asked her, I said, no potatoes? She said, well, no, Dean, would you like some potatoes? I said, no. And the light went off, the aha moment, the oh crap moment, whatever you want to call it. I realized not everybody in the world had potatoes with every meal. It was, I know it didn't sound like a big deal to y'all, but for an 8-year-old, 9-year-old kid, I just thought everybody ate potatoes. So what it made me do, or made me start doing then, was to question everything. And my mother always told me to question everything. So that's the potato theory. And the potato theory is basically we have aha moments every day of our life, but you have to be aware to be alive and to notice them when they happen to you. And that's what the potato theory is.
I love it, Dean. Don't ever get tired of telling that story. Please continue to tell that story, and we all benefit. I benefit every time I hear from it. Thank you, Dean.
Not a problem. Listen, I'm just glad to be here. I'm grateful to your grandfather because, see, he instilled in you to be curious, get involved, and ask for help. And because you shared that message one day, I picked up on your LinkedIn and started joining Clubhouse. And my life has turned completely around because of it. So what I try to stress to people on LinkedIn and people that I go out there and follow, can one person make a difference in your life? Absolutely. And I want y'all to know that everyone in this room has made a difference in my life. Y'all were part of my story. And going forward, things are going to get better. And y'all need to always know that if it wasn't for y'all, I mean, a rising tide does lift off ships, and y'all are proof of that. So thanks for letting me join.
We love you, Dean. We appreciate you, man. Keep coming back and keep inspiring us. Justin Ulrich, what's up, my friend? It's been too long. Welcome.
It has been. Justin Ulrich, lead the marketing team here to Vocalize. You know, being in marketing, I think for me, it's curiosity like solves every issue that I come into contact with. Like if typically, you know, you think about it, like curiosity drives innovation. It drives new ways of thinking about things, new ways of solving problems, but it gets you to the solution. And in many instances, like I've always had the mindset that, like, you know, anything is possible. And, you know, maybe it's because when I was a kid, you know, I was given many chances to just tinker, work with my hands, figure out how things worked, you know, growing up in a small town, just having the freedom to do different things. But I developed the confidence to be able to solve any problem that's thrown my way. And I truly, like, I have the mindset that anything is possible. And for me, the way I approach things is I work backwards. So I try to figure out, hey, what is it I'm trying to accomplish? And then, you know, I have a good enough, you know, understanding of all the current pieces I have in place. But when you look at the things that you were trying to accomplish, there's a gap there, and you have to try to figure out how do you gap fill to get to that goal. But if you work backwards, it helps to identify the most critical path to get there. And typically, you can get there in the most efficient way possible if you start from the end result and then you work towards it. Otherwise, if you start from where you are and you try to work towards a goal, you're going to have a much more winding path. You may try things, they may fail. You know, you may fail more than you typically need to get to your result. But it's going to take a little bit more work. If you work backwards, it helps you to get to the most critical path to what you're trying to accomplish. And on the marketing side, you know, being curious also leads to, like I said, innovation. There's so many new tools and new ways to do things, and you know, your audience is going to change. It's going to shift. There's going to be new platforms, new social platforms. There's going to be new AI tools. You name it. And if you're not curious and you're kind of stagnant and stuck in a spot where you're comfortable with just doing what you're doing, you're going to quickly get surpassed by the industry, and you won't stay cutting edge in terms of being a leader in the space. So that's that.
Were you a curious kid, Justin?
Yeah, very curious, very curious. I grew up next across the street from a big field, we had these big power lines next to that. So, oh, you grew up under power lines? Yeah, I grew up near power lines, so now it makes sense, right? But
Stop it.
but we had woods we could build forts in. My dad was a building contractor. We had all the tools. We had all the materials to just, he'd get pissed, but we'd build skateboard ramps and all sorts of stuff with the materials that he was going to use on a job. But we just had the ability to do things that you typically don't see kids having nowadays, and they're just sitting inside on their video games or on their devices. But yeah.
Awesome. Thank you, Justin. Jordan Silverman, our guest host, talked about hustle. I can't wait to hear the episode. Thank you for hosting. Thank you for being here. Jordan, what's up?
Hey everyone, how are you? Can you
Doing
hear me
great.
okay? I'm
Yeah.
in transit. All right, perfect.
How did your room hosting go before you share your curiosity story?
Honestly, it's such a good time. Like, not saying I should take over Cali BBQ, but I'm not saying I shouldn't. It went pretty well, I thought. So I had a great time. Thank you.
That's awesome. Well, we appreciate it. I can't wait to hear the episode. Anybody that's listening, please, if you want to hear any replays of any of the LinkedIn Lives, we have them on our digital hospitality feed. So check them out. Jordan, tell us a story about curiosity.
Yeah, so again, thanks for having me. Always love coming here every week. This, as Dean says, is a large part of how I stay curious, but I want to talk about being curious with actually getting to know people and caring. And I think when I look back at my business career, a lot of my most successful relationships, partnerships was just me being curious and finding out, how can I help you? And even if it's not a short-term answer, being curious about how can I help you? Let me just learn a little bit about you personally. Not just going straight to the sale, but being curious about what you can do to help someone achieve a goal, get a promotion, get an outcome. I think that's really where I've been trying to be as curious as possible from a professional standpoint, is understanding what can I do to help this person, and just being curious around that, asking questions, not just diving into things. On the personal side, it might sound a little bit counter, but I try to be curious about very few things, but very curious about those select things. So I have my head in the sand about 99% of things, but I try to be super, super curious about things that interest me. So that's kind of counter to being curious, but that's what I've been doing recently, is strap for time. Let's be curious about what we care about and ignore everything else.
That is I'm happy you brought that up, obsession of deep curiosity. How are you so curious that you ignore, you're chasing the thing that you're actually deeply curious about? I mean, that's a testament to why we believe in digital hospitality and why we even got to where we are now, hosting these rooms, replaying these, this is deep obsession. This is deep obsession with a deep thesis that we are not alone, that we are connected, that there are other people on this earth that are curious leaders that want to get better, and we can share secrets, and that we don't have all the answers. Every single time we come to these rooms, I have something that I take away, something that I benefit from, and hopefully that you, the audience, that we benefit from. Let's go around the room. Stover is recording. He cannot share today, but we're grateful that the room's getting recorded and that it will get replayed. Troy Hooper, tip, takeaway, homework assignment?
Yeah, that's what it's called. You invented it. Yeah.
I forgot. I don't know. I got a little rusty there. Go.
You take a couple weeks off and look what happens. Welcome home, by the way.
Yeah, the power of consistency. Go ahead.
It's real simple. I think it summarizes what many people have said here today. And if you just remember it before you walk into any conversation, any meeting, any situation that you put yourself in, seek first to understand, then be understood. It is stitched in the back of all of my tailored jackets, in the back of my collar. If you flipped up my collar, it says seek first to understand. Ask questions before giving opinions. It's a really powerful tool.
Yeah, one of the things I wanted to share, I was on a call yesterday with Michael Beck. He is a co-founder of Popcorn GTM, but he is a master at the selling process. And we were talking about sales. And one of the things we were talking about was selling the best salespeople, they ask the most questions. They are the most curious. They are most curious about a client's pain point. And one of the analogies was in a trial attorney. The trial attorney, we all see the movies, we all see the shows where the trial attorney, they win the case because they're talking at the end, and the closing statements that they say, that's not where the case is won. The case is won in discovery. The case is won in deposition. The case is won asking all of those questions in the beginning to actually get the information where you can actually close the case, close the sale, build the relationship. Jason Berkowitz, tip, takeaway, homework assignment.
Last night I was out with my friend and his daughters, and the 13-year-old is an incredible debater. And I saw her beat down her parents to get highlights and whatnot. And I took them out to ice cream, and we're sitting there. And I looked at her and I said, "You're amazing at talking louder than everybody and hammering it in. What I want to see, and we're going to work on, is how can you talk softer and actually ask questions, get them to see your point by them talking, not by you talking." And then her dad looked at me, he goes, "Great, make her even stronger." And I was like, yeah, that's the point of it, man. And so she's like, "All right, let me think about that." Now, granted, she's 13, going on 14 quickly, but it's great in line with what we're talking about. So I'm going to see her in a couple days. We're going to start working on that. Glad I was able to make it in today. Traveling with family, might miss Friday and Wednesday. Going to pop in if I can. Definitely miss the rooms. Glad I was able to be here for this one. See you guys soon.
We appreciate you, Jason. Thank you. Richard, tip, takeaway, homework assignment.
Yeah, thanks, Sean. Good to have you back. It's a really good room, this, because I love curiosity, and one of the things that I'm actively doing at the moment is listening to different podcasts, both for inspiration and knowledge. And the key to it is listening. But I've also got a bit of homework for my American friends. So you know how to pronounce words correctly. It's herbs and oregano. I'll leave you with that.
Herbs? Did I say it right? Herbs?
Yep, herbs and oregano.
Oregano. Is it aluminum?
Aluminium.
Aluminium? Stop it.
No, you guys keep saying oregano. No such thing. It's oregano.
Oregano. Okay.
This is misinformation.
You lost to Spain. You can't talk about anybody else for another 2 weeks.
Ouch.
You're in the penalty box
Jason,
for another 2 weeks.
That is what? Now you're throwing shots. We love you, Richard and Scott. I'm sorry for your loss. I have a lot of friends that love that love England. That actually a friend that made it with his daughter to the game, and unfortunately he didn't get to celebrate. So,
Good game.
I'm sure Richard and Scott have other opinions. Laura, tip, takeaway, homework assignment.
Okay, first off, I think you're making up all of these pronunciations, Richard, just to get us to try and talk like that. And I tagged you and Scott on Zach Oates' talk, where he was talking about croissants, which we know is the English pronunciation, unlike the French pronunciation croissant. Did I get that right?
Scott,
You got it right.
Scott, do it.
Scott, what do you got for me?
At this point, my microphone's broken, but yeah,
Let's hear your pronunciation.
I can't, because Justin has to get through the day without his mind being defocused. So I'm going to leave this for another time. I've already said to him I'm going to make him a ringtone that's going to sit on his phone. So
Yes. And then I have a quick story about Jason, what you said about observing a young person, completely winning with the parents. And you'll appreciate this, Richard and Scott. My son once, when he was young, came in and woke me up and said, "Mom, we have to buy this item right now." Some Lego thing or
Lost you, Laura. Are you there?
we can wait until the morning. And he said, don't you know the people in the UK are the number one consumers of this? We have to buy it right now. So somehow, I did not thankfully fall for it, but yeah, this kid was an incredible salesperson from a really young age. And one of my 2 homework assignments for myself are to, number 1, listen to the podcast that Simon who's listening today, was so gracious to invite me on his podcast, The Culinary Mechanic. It's my first time being a podcast guest. I'm sure it's terrible, but if anyone has any feedback for me, I would love to hear it. And I really appreciate all of your support. And then the second homework assignment for myself is to start conversations with Talk to Me.
Awesome. Can you share the link in the Instagram group chat?
Yes.
For that podcast episode. Thank you. And awesome, Simon. Very cool. And anyone that wants to join us on Instagram, just send me a message at Sean P. Walchef. I'll add you to the big group chat that we have. Chris, tip, takeaway, homework assignment. Thank you, Laura.
You have to constantly be curious to be able to innovate or be a disruptor. So never stop being curious. Otherwise, you're not going to innovate your business and disrupt the industry.
It's awesome. Thanks, Chris. Mike LaRue, tip, takeaway, homework assignment.
Is it tomato or tomato? That's the real question.
Tomato.
Tomato. Let's see. Tip, takeaway. Tip, ask more questions. Takeaway, I'm actually going to the conversations that I'm going to be having. I'm going to ask more questions. I'm going to try to ask, squeeze one or minimum of 2 more questions out of every conversation that I have today.
There you go. Appreciate that. And
see what else I can extract.
I love it. I love it. Scott Turner, tip, takeaway, croissant.
Yeah, I mean, listen, the British were really good at failure. So even though we had a bad result on Sunday, Monday morning was a different day. So, yeah, no skin off our bones, to be fair. So on to the next one. It's definitely coming on next time. My tip, takeaway, homework assignment. I love Jason's as well. I'm gonna lead in with some more in terms of tell me more or talk to me. I think that's a brilliant way to start a conversation and get people to open up.
Awesome. Thank you, Scott. Justin Ulrich.
Yeah, just thinking toward the tail end of this conversation, with regards to like parenting and my kids, like they ask questions and typically you give them an answer. And I think that their generation specifically is they can just quickly pull up the answer to anything and they don't have to really use, their brains to try to get to the logic behind, or help logic get them to the answer. And so I'm going to do a better job this week when my kids ask me a question to ask them, well, what do they think the answer is and why do they think that, to try to get them to try to spur some more intelligent thought there. But
that's great. Yeah, it's asking the follow-up question. Even though you got the answer, where's the context of what's going on around it? That's awesome, Justin. Jordan, tip, takeaway, homework assignment.
My homework assignment, this is pretty simple. Laura, I can't wait to hear the episode. I'm literally gonna, as soon as we hang up, go knock out some work and listen to it. So that's my simple but exciting homework assignment.
That is awesome. We appreciate that. And thank you everybody down below. Summer, Chris, Simon, Mark, Jesse, and I'm sorry, I don't know how to pronounce your name, but Zafarian. Thank you for being here. We appreciate you. We hope that you join us on stage, and anybody that's listening, we hope you join us Wednesdays, Fridays, 10 a.m. Pacific time, 1 p.m. Eastern time, 6 p.m. London time, wherever you are in the world. This community appreciates you. Dean is no longer here, but the potato theory was phenomenal. It's always better every time he tells it. Let that be a lesson to everyone in the room, myself included. We need to keep telling the stories that mean the most to us and get better at telling those stories. No one has heard the same story, and you should be better every time you tell a story. So stay curious, get involved. Don't be afraid to ask for help. Thank you, Stover, Jason, Troy, Richard, Laura, Chris, Mike, Scott, Justin, and Jordan. You guys have an awesome Wednesday. We'll see you guys on Friday. Thank you.